Hello, welcome to another IELTS writing video. In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate how you can use your understanding of the written exam and how it's marked to maximize your performance and to win praise from your IELTS examiner. In short, we're going to look at how you can write an essay that your examiner will love. On the screen, you see a very simple graphic, and this simple graphic is going to help me explain two very simple ideas. The first simple idea is a fundamental definition of what the written IELTS is all about. On the left, we see a generic IELTS exam taker, and on the right we see a generic examiner. Fundamentally, the IELTS is a test of your ability to communicate a message in written English. That is simple idea number one. Simple idea number two is regarding the examiner. Examiners use rubrics to mark your writing. The rubrics are standardized. They're the same all over the world. Your examiner has received training to do the job that they do for the IELTS exam. And thus, an IELTS essay that scores band 7 in one country, that same essay will score band 7 in any other country. So simple idea number two is that the actions of your examiner are predictable. Your examiner is a trained individual that has been trained exactly like all other examiners around the world. Your examiner is following a rubric that is exactly the same as all of the rubrics around the world. So we can predict exactly what your examiner is going to do based on the piece of work that you're giving them. Now, using those two ideas, I want to explain to you how you can put together a strategy to maximize your ability and to maximize the mark that you receive on the written exam. So to do this, we need to understand exactly how the examiner is going to be approaching your writing. Now, if we look at the public version of the IELTS band descriptors chart, everyone is familiar with this. I'm not going to go into the details, but we know that there are 4 different categories that your examiner is going to use to gauge your writing. They are task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resources, and grammatical range and accuracy. Now, as you know, there exists a very close relationship between these 4 different categories. Now, what I want to do is I want to help you visualize exactly what this relationship is. And in my experience, the relationship is not so much lateral, side to side, where one equally affects the other. The relationship more looks like this. Okay, so here we have the 5 different sections because I've separated coherence and cohesion. And I find that the relationship operates like this. So basically, the foundation of your essay really is grammar, and grammar can make or break the other sections. A student that writes with poor grammar tends to use words improperly. They might be using academic vocabulary, they might be using appropriate vocabulary, but if the grammar is weak, then often the lexical resources themselves will start to falter. The strength of them will start to falter. Now, the same is true for cohesion. Students with weak grammar tend to punctuate their sentences improperly. The phrasing that they use to link the sentences together will be in error. And of course, this affects the cohesion portion of the mark. Now, grammar also directly affects coherence. So students that are weak in grammar, often their sentences will be difficult to understand. The examiner will have to read them 2 times, 3 times to pull out the meaning. Sometimes they can't pull out the meaning at all. So grammar affects coherence directly. So we have grammar with a very direct effect upon these 3 different sections. Okay, now if you notice the way that I've set this up, cohesion also has a very direct influence upon coherence, and the same is true for lexical resources. So when the student's ability to write cohesively starts to break down, then the links between the sentences will also be weak. The links between the paragraphs will also be weak. And thus the overall message that the student is trying to deliver to the examiner will be weakened. And that overall message is coherence. So you can see that there's a strong influence that cohesion has upon coherence. Now the same is true with lexical resources. Now if we assume for a second that the student has strong grammar, let's assume that the grammar is strong. However, they choose incorrect words. They don't choose words that deliver their message accurately. Well, the end result is again a weakened sense of coherence. The end result is the examiner having to read, to question, why are they using this word, the message is not clear. So you can see that lexical resources also has a direct influence upon coherence. Okay, so we have this sort of cascading effect between these different skills. So if grammar is weak, then cohesion is weak. If grammar is weak, coherence will be weak. If grammar is lexical resources, cohesion and lexical resources, if these are weak, then coherence will be weak. Now, when coherence starts to break down, this goes back to our original diagram here. When coherence starts to break down, the ability of the students to communicate a message to the examiner in written English is hindered. And when that happens, the overall achievement of the task is hurt. Okay, so as you can see, the grammar does lead to problems with task achievement, but it tends to sort of go through a breakdown of these other skills. Now, the skills don't work in reverse. So for example, a student cannot be extremely coherent yet have weak grammar. That just doesn't happen. It has to come this direction. The grammar has to be there, and then these other sections are there. A student might be able to show certain linking between sentences and paragraphs, but that linking really cannot be very, very strong with weak grammar. The same is true for lexical resources. These can't be framed, they can't be used, they can't be exercised if the grammar is weak. Okay, so at the base of these relationships is grammar, and the other skills build upon that. So as we can see, improving grammar can lead to an overall improving of the student's mark. Now, I want to share with you some strategies for IELTS that you can use to strengthen your grammar. The first strategy is to engage in rote learning. And what I mean by this is you should be reading Band 9 essays and memorizing the punctuation, memorizing the grammatical forms, memorizing the vocabulary that's used and how it's used, and what kind of words are used. Memorizing the way that the sentences are structured. All of these things, memorizing. So you read your Band 9 essays, you read them again and again and again, you make notes, memorize. And what you will find is that if you truly memorize it, and I mean, memorize to the point where you could rewrite that essay from memory, what you will find is you will start to naturally apply what you've memorized to your own writing. The sentence structures, the grammatical forms, the grammar tenses, you will naturally start to apply these to your own writing. And I guarantee that you will start to see improvement in your writing quickly. So that's tip number 1. Now, tip number 2, get someone to check your grammar. It's very unfortunate when I meet with students and they tell me that they've been practicing for the past 6 months, the past year, they've been practicing their writing by themselves, and their writing is full of grammatical errors. And I am sure that these are errors that they've been making for the past 6 months or the past year. The only thing is that nobody's told them that they're making these mistakes, so they continue to make them. So every once in a while, get someone to check your grammar. Maybe a colleague that you work with, native English speaker. It'll take them 10 minutes to check your essay, clean up the grammar. You should be doing that every so often. Tip number 3, never make the same mistake twice. I work with students online, they send me their essays. A pet peeve of mine is when I correct a grammar issue, and then in the very next essay they send to me, they make the same grammar mistake. Don't do that. If you know that something is mistaken, if somebody has told you it's a mistake, force yourself to remember. Don't be lazy. Force yourself to remember what the grammatical issue is and never ever make that mistake again. Tip number 4, grammar guides are obviously very useful. They can help us to check the exact form that we're using in our essays, but they should be for reference only. If you plan to run through grammar exercises like the fill in the blanks exercise or punctuation exercises in a grammar book and then apply that to your essay, you're going to find that it's very, very difficult. Often grammar guides are not focused on the IELTS examination. They're dealing with sentence structures that could perhaps be in your IELTS exam, but you might spend several lessons studying grammar forms that are not typically used. A much better strategy is just to look at Band 9 essays and look at the grammar forms that you see in them and then replicate those in your own essays. Okay, so grammar guides are for reference only. Okay, so that's all I have to say for today about that. I hope that lesson helps clarify for you a few strategies that you can take to maximize your personal score on the examination. I encourage you to plant that grammar seed and to watch your IELTS tree grow. Let's make those examiners happy. Thanks for listening and have a nice evening.